Hello, welcome to this session from Professional and Continuing Education at the University of Cambridge about the Certificate in Immunology. My name is Professor Tom Money and I'm the course director for this programme, and I'm joined today by two past students from the programme, Joycelyn Cash and Beatrice Burke. I'm going to start by giving a brief overview of the course, and then we'll have time to address any questions that you have about the programme or about studying at PACE in general. So the course itself is an undergraduate certificate. It's delivered at the first year undergraduate level, and it covers a basic introduction to immunology. When we designed the programme, we were thinking about what sorts of topics will be interesting to people, what will people want to know about, and how can we cover and introduce that in a relatively straightforward and engaging manner. To do that, we decided to break down the course into three separate sections, and those are delivered as separate units. The first one of those covers the innate and adaptive immune system. The second one looks at the role of the immune system in health and disease. And the third one addresses a particular set of case studies by looking in detail at cancer immunology. And in a moment, I'll just give a little bit more information on each of those three units for you. Before I do that, I just want to give you some of an overview about how we deliver the teaching and how we carry out the assessments for the programme. So the course itself is delivered online. It's a mix of synchronous sessions through Zoom. For the coming year, we will be doing 4 Zoom sessions for each of the units, and these will be taking place on Saturday afternoons, UK time. This is complemented by an online virtual learning environment using a Moodle platform, where the material being covered in these Zoom synchronous sessions is supplemented and added to through this virtual learning environment. There will be additional information provided online, there will be recommended readings, and there will be activities for you to engage with. The units themselves are made up of 4 separate topics, and these will tend to follow a pattern of a synchronous session plus 2 weeks of topic material before we move on to the next topic in that unit. The units themselves are assessed through a range of different methods. Each unit has a unit-specific assessment that happens towards the end of that unit, and then there are portfolio opportunities that take place across the year that ultimately will make up half of your mark. The portfolios themselves allow you the opportunity to produce material in a range of different formats. Some of that might be presentation-based, some of it might be writing essays, some of it might be delivering podcasts or creating posters. They're designed to be flexible, to allow you to play to your strengths, and to allow you to demonstrate the depth and level of your knowledge and understanding. So I'll just quickly run through a bit more detail now about the 3 units. So the first one of these, the innate and adaptive immune system, is taught to bring you to a position where you understand the basic functions of the immune system within humans. It begins by looking at the innate immune response, so particularly how we recognize infections and the sorts of molecules that exist in our bodies that allow that recognition to take place. It then follows that by moving to the process that we term adaptive immunity, which is the mechanism by which our immune systems remember and learn about threats. We look at the cells that are involved in these processes, and we look at how this memory function is created and how it is helpful for allowing our bodies to resist and fight infections and threats when they occur. Immunology is a topic that has lots of different tests involved in it, and that's partly so that we can perform experiments to help us understand how the immune system functions, but it's also useful for doctors to be able to carry out tests that will allow them to undertake and understand how someone's immune system is functioning. And so one of our topics will look at some of these techniques in a little bit more detail and give you a few basic skills in the interpretation of the tests. And then we end the first unit by looking in a little bit more detail at two processes called hypersensitivity and autoimmunity, which allow us to start explaining how sometimes the immune system can be problematic, and processes that are meant to be protective might go wrong, and they might then cause responses to occur that lead to some sort of disease. And some of these ideas are then picked up on in our second unit, which focuses much more on the immune system in health and disease. And for this unit, we tend to focus on a case study approach so that we can explain and explore how the immune system is responding to particular threats and dangers. This again is split into four separate topics. The first half of the unit focuses on different types of inflammation. Acute inflammation, and so that's inflammation that's occurring in the body over the period of just a few days or maybe a week or so. And then chronic inflammation, where this is happening over a much more protracted period of time. We look at diseases like sepsis for acute inflammation and conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, diabetes, atherosclerosis when we're exploring chronic inflammation. We will look at the processes that underpin these diseases, how inflammation is important for that, and the different cell types that are involved. The second half of the unit begins by building explicitly on some of the content from Unit 1, where we revisit hypersensitivity, but this time we look at it specifically from its role in the allergic response. And we will look at the different types of hypersensitivity that exist and how these can contribute to conditions like asthma, celiac disease, and anaphylactic shock, amongst others. And then we end this unit by focusing on how therapeutically we can modulate the immune system to help it be even more protective against threats and dangers. And we do this by exploring the process of vaccination. So we look at how vaccination works, we look at why it's important, and we look at examples of where it has been effectively used against a wide range of diseases. And then in the final unit, we focus on one particular set of diseases, cancer. Cancer itself consists of many, many different types, and we will explore a range of these in trying to understand, to begin with, what cancer is and how it can come about in our bodies, the changes that it will cause, and then exploring in more detail how cancer interacts with our immune system. We'll be interested in trying to understand why cancer cells are not cleared that effectively by our immune system. We'll be interested in the changes that take place in the immune system, and we will be interested in how our immune system tries to target and tackle cancer cells that appear in the body. And then at the end of this unit, we'll look in more detail at some of the treatments that are being developed to target cancers that look to utilize our own immune system. So these are things called immunotherapies, and recognize the strength that our immune system has and the fact that for cancer, sometimes it needs help to be effective. And under these circumstances, new treatments are becoming available in the clinic that utilize the power and strength of our own immune systems to tackle these cancer cells. So those are the three different areas of the course. Hopefully it gives you a very quick overview of the sorts of topics that we cover. We'll pick up on some of the questions now. And as I said at the start, some of those will be course specific about content, and some of those will be focused on the more generalized elements of learning as a student. So I will stop sharing my screen now so that then we can go on and take those questions. Okay, so let me just pick up the first couple of questions that have come through. And in a few places, I will invite Beatrice and Jocelyn to contribute answers to those as well from their own experience as a student. So one of the first questions that's come through relates to the balance of learning on one of these courses in terms of time commitment. So somebody would like to know how easy it is to balance the course requirements with either other study or with a job. So I'm going to ask Beatrice first and then Jocelyn just to give their thoughts on how they managed to balance their studies with the other commitments that they had going on, and then I will add a little bit after that. So Beatrice, should we start with you?
Thank you, Professor Tom. So I personally am a full-time student, towards completing my nursing degree. I'm only left with three months to finish. But I needed this to complement it because this is like a specialty that I want to take in. So immunology means a lot to me in my clinical practice. So as a parent and at the same time as a full-time student, it's very important to be organized. And I found it really, really challenging in terms of time and being able to manage time equitably. So for me, I find it really helpful attending the sessions and being able to, there is a standard hours that we should put in our immunology module. And so I kind of proportion that time so that I can be able to um, be at the same pace with each weekly modules that we were meeting. And also where I had difficulty, I was able to approach yourself and be able to seek also like help from the student services. They're very helpful. And for me, my success towards this course came through working with a team of both the university services that are available and being able to approach yourself because my lecturer was pretty approachable and prompting, replying to emails and giving support where need be and being able to help rectify areas that I was finding challenges in. So that together with managing my time and other commitments, it helped me successfully complete this course really.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Beatrice. Jocelyn, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Well, just to say that somewhere on the Cambridge website, read that you should be thinking about basically 600 hours during the 9 months that you would be devoting to your course, and I would say that that's pretty accurate, which works out to about 20 or so hours a week. Um, and I would probably say I spent, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it is a serious commitment. Uh, More so that I say would say than American online classes. uh, Pat yourself on the back, Tom. But yeah, no, it was great, but well worth it. So make sure you've got some time management skills on board.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to pick up with another question now. So someone has asked about the Zoom sessions on Saturdays and whether it's possible to watch recordings of these if someone's got work commitments, and about how long the sessions are. So yes, all of the Zoom sessions are recorded. And those recordings will normally go live onto the VLE within a few days of the session having taken place. So you are able to watch them back in your own time. The schedule for the coming year is going to split those sessions into two-hour blocks on Saturday afternoons. We've tried to be consistent in the timetabling of those for the coming year. And so UK time, they will be between 1 and 3 p.m. and 4 and 6 p.m. So there'll be an hour's break in between. So again, that gives a little bit more flexibility for people who may be able to get to one of those 2-hour sessions on an afternoon, but maybe not necessarily both of them. It also means that we will sometimes use the same academic tutor to teach all 4 hours on an afternoon. Sometimes we might have one tutor who does the first session and one tutor who does the second session. Again, it's about making sure that we've got the right experts delivering the teaching for each session. Okay, so next question that's come up, if I just look down my list, we've got a couple of questions that have come in about how learning is assessed, how many written assignments there are, and what the assignments sort of look like. So I guess I can give a little bit of information about that in terms of the fact that half of the mark for the course comes through portfolio assignments. These are submitted at the end of the year and are an opportunity for you to produce a piece of work that is the equivalent of somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 words of essay writing. But you have a choice of different formats and different types of activity that you can do. So these are set up where each unit will have a series of portfolio questions assigned to it, and there will be a few questions that cover topics that are common themes throughout the whole of the course. And you will be able to choose which of these portfolio pieces you decide to submit. And then you will do the work on those. If you want to get some formative feedback on them as the course progresses, you're able to do so, and then you will submit them at the end of the course. As alongside that, each unit also has its own individual assignment. In the past, we have used a range of sort of short answer knowledge-based questions and some structured questions that sort of guide you through some of the principles covered. They might include data handling exercises, and they will be assessed at the end of each of the units. So there'll be 3 different assessment points for those across the year. What we're looking at the moment is revising some of those unit-based assessments so that they reflect accurately the content that's covered each year. So before I move on to the next question, I wonder whether either Jocelyn or Beatrix, you want to add any comments about how you found the portfolio part of the assessments. Maybe we'll start with you, Jocelyn, this time.
Oh, well, I thought they were great fun, actually. Allowed you to choose something that you were particularly interested in, and allowed a little more range in the way that you communicated the information rather than a strict I don't want to say science-based as if that's a bad thing, but allowed you to use slightly different, more approachable language than the questions in the structured questions or the short answer, because there's so little time, so little word count. You have to say it and be quiet. when you say that was true, Tom?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably a fair observation. Beatrice, anything you would like to add?
I find it quite interesting because out of all the units that we had, surely there was quite a lot to choose from. Personally, I found it a bit difficult choosing which topic because all seemed interesting, but I managed to narrow it down to what I thought I could evidence best, like what I had more materials on and I had more evidence on. But it broadened my way of thinking and I absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A couple of other questions have come through. So we've got questions about the access to libraries and support for the virtual learning environment. So if you become an enrolled student, then you will be given essentially login credentials for the university, and those will allow you to have access to online resources as if you were a student at the university, and so that includes access to the online library facilities. So we look to make sure that all of the resources that are put on the virtual learning environment for you are either accessible through that library subscription that the university possesses, or that they are freely accessible articles and resources anyway, so that you'll always be able to access the material that you need to do the learning that's required. We've also got a question about average class sizes. That obviously varies from year to year depending on how many students apply. Over the last few iterations of this course, we've tended to have between 15 and 25 students at a time, which means that we get quite a nice classroom environment for the synchronous learning sessions, so that even when people have work commitments and aren't able to join those, there's usually enough different people there so that we can have proper discussions. And it also means there's the potential to develop a learning community through interactions on the virtual learning environment. And as a member of the academic teaching staff, it means I'm always able to get to know who all of the individual students are. So it's not like you're one of 500 students and essentially just a number. So it helps with the sort of the personalization of the course, and means that we are able in our synchronous teaching sessions to be quite adaptive sometimes to things that a particular group of students may have interests in. And certainly in the last iteration, we adapted some of our sessions based on feedback from the students about things they wanted particularly to hear more about in future sessions. We've also got a couple of questions that have come up about scholarships and funding to support places on the course. So all information about that can be found on the PACE website. They will have a link to any eligible or any bursaries that might be available and the eligibility requirements for those. There aren't that many different bursaries available, but if you want to, you can go and have a look at those. And I know that sometimes that there are people who are able to take out financial support through their own government systems to help support study. But again, that will depend what region of the world you are studying in. And then again, let me just have a quick look through some of the other questions that have cropped up. Yes, so we've got some here that again ask about what graduates of the course go on to do, whether the course is of use for somebody who's looking to change their career focus. So certainly in relation to that second question, I would say that it has the potential to start helping somebody who might want to change careers. We've had students in the past who have often used the course as a way of trying to understand whether they are interested enough in it as a topic to want to move into a career in that area. As Beatrice indicated when she was speaking earlier, for students who use it to complement their studies in an area that's relevant to what they're already doing, and so to increase their level of knowledge, that's quite common to see. And we've had students who have used it as a starting point to develop a wider range of courses and qualifications that they have then ultimately used to get new jobs in healthcare, for example, or in diagnostic laboratories. So I would say that there is potential there for it to be helpful from a career point of view. We've also got a question about previous study and the sort of level of experience and knowledge that might be needed. So we're very happy to have students on the course who have got degrees in science from the past. We, I think, probably see a mix of students, those who are doing it just because they are genuinely interested in the topic, and then those who are doing it because there's some sort of either study-related or work-related reason to do so. Having a degree from a number of years ago will not count against you at all in the application process, and will be very welcoming for you onto the course. As I mentioned at the start, the course is taught at first year undergraduate level. And therefore there is an assumption that there is a degree of sort of basic biological understanding. So we don't sort of teach everything from first principles. I recognise that probably for some students means that the terminology in particular that's used can take a little bit of time to get used to. And if you apply and get a place on the course, I would suggest probably having a little look at some maybe A-level textbooks in biology just to refresh your terminology, or some websites that provide open access resources at the right sort of level again, so that you can just feel sort of familiar with the terminology that's likely to come up in the course. And I don't know, Beatrice or Jocelyn, whether either of you want to share any sort of reflections on how you sort of, I guess, adapted to the scientific focus and terminology of the program. Beatrice, maybe this time we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. So personally, in each unit, there are some guidelines on textbooks and extra information that we can read about within each of the units. And then what I did personally is I utilized the library so much because we have free access to it anytime, all week. So I made sure that I researched a lot using the library itself, the library guide, and I was able to build on my knowledge on each topic that we was doing every single week. And so with that, in addition with attending lectures, it broadened my spectrum in terms of terminologies and adjusting to it. But again, I work within a clinical practice, so that actually helped me carry on the information that I get into the classroom and then embed it into my own clinical practice within the National Health Service in England. So I feel really lucky because for me, this is a bonus, but at the same time, both information from work and from the university, I was able to embed it together to broaden my knowledge, really. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Jocelyn, anything you'd like to add?
Well, yeah, I would say, because I already have a background in biology generally and anatomy and physiology, but I very much added to my knowledge, I assure you, way beyond what I teach my anatomy students. But I would suggest, for example, having specifically a look at a cell biology text that would be a little bit more in depth than just a general biology text. But yeah, it was pretty wonderful. And every week I'd come back and say, well, Saturday, this is what we learned. I gave a very stirring lecture on sepsis.
Thank you. Yes, cell biology, I think, probably is the most sensible recommendation for getting to grips with some of the terminology that comes up. So I think we're getting close now to the end of the questions that are coming through. I think maybe there's a couple more that are here. I guess one that, again, this is probably relevant to both Beatrice and Jocelyn as previous students. So the question is whether you worked closely with other students on your cohort. Now, obviously, we set up a virtual learning environment for students to engage in, but I know that often students create smaller groups that then work quite closely together. So I don't know if you'd be willing to share whether you did, and if so, how you sort of interacted with and worked with other students on the course when you were studying. Jocelyn, maybe we'll start with you this time.
Well, we didn't use the facility set up by the virtual learning environment. We did have a WhatsApp group that several of us were in, but it wasn't so much like, hey, Mark, I don't really understand so and so, can you help me? But it was more like more technical questions, like are the references for both sets of questions, or is it just one, or to make sure that everyone was clear on what was expected. So.
Okay, so almost like a support network in a way then.
Yeah, support network, exactly.
Yeah. And Beatrice, in your cohort, was there any interaction between the students outside of the teaching sessions?
Yeah, I was in the same cohort with Jocelyn. We were we was pretty much in the same cohort, and we've continued to be in the same cohort. So what was interesting was like towards the end, towards the end of the course, a few students met in person, and we were able to help each other, and call each other and guide each other and some questions and where they're facing difficulty. So it didn't only end within the chat group. Individual students approached each other individually, and we managed to help each other push through, and we made it in the end, really. So the support system is really good. Apart from the students themselves, again, I'll reiterate that the library is very important, and also following the materials that the lecturer gives at the end of each unit is very, very fundamental in boosting up the academic progress of each unit, really. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So I think there's one last question that I will pick up on now, which is about the types of learners that we see on our courses and the sort of range, I guess, of experiences that they bring. So, I mean, we see students from all sorts of backgrounds come through on this course. Each iteration has a slightly different, set of students, but the one common theme that they all have is an interest and a passion in learning more about immunology. We will have some who are studying at the same time, sort of similar or related courses, some who are just doing it because they're interested in particular topics that the course is going to cover. What we often find is that when we'll have sort of the conversations early in the program about why people have chosen to do the course, there might be some particular reason that they've picked the certificate, and then when we sort of revisit some of that at the end of the program, often they've discovered that they've had their eyes opened into a new area of immunology that they didn't even really know much about at all, and have become sort of passionate about that going forwards. We see people who are very used to studying. We see people who haven't studied for many, many years and are coming back after even 20 or 30 years away from studying. And I think one of the things that we try to make sure happens on the program is that regardless of your age, your backgrounds, your experiences, what you've studied before, what your motivations are for doing the course, that you're able to engage with it effectively and you're able to get something really positive out of doing the program. And I think the last thing I'd certainly want to say before I just invite Jocelyn and Beatrice to add anything else they'd like to, is that there are other courses at PACE that this program complements, particularly one on infectious diseases. The two courses were originally created together to complement one another, and I know that a number of students, I think both Beatrice and Jocelyn fall into this category, have completed both of those certificates in the end once they finish their studies. So we do look to try and make sure that the stuff that's covered on this immunology program complements some of these other programs as a way of helping you to extend your learning and maybe to explore other opportunities. So before we finish, first I'm going to thank Jocelyn and Beatrice for making the time to come and join us on this session today, and then I'm going to invite them to just finish off with anything else they would like to say about the certificate in immunology. And so I'll start with you, Jocelyn, and then we'll hand over to Beatrice.
Okay. Well, I would like to give some advice to prospective students, and not just for immunology, but for any course within PACE or Cambridge, is to be very, to think carefully about what you want to write, want to say, to make sure that you answer the question as asked, not one that you would like to be asked. Make sure that you cover every part, and not add any extra information because there isn't time. And so you need all your words to make sure that you answer the question in the greatest possible depth, because sometimes the grader is looking for things that you didn't know that he was or she was looking for. So, you know, be aware of that.
Wise words there. Thank you.
Oh, I would have to say one more thing about the library resources, that they are excellent. And I have in my looking for information, I have come up on other resources, and then it would ask you to log in through your institution. There doesn't seem to be any database of which Cambridge does not have subscription.
No, that's true. You get pretty good access, don't you?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Beatrice, any last words from you?
Thank you. So I would like to say that there is opportunity for growth and development. So yeah, it is a level 4 certificate, but there is opportunity to grow, and it doesn't matter whether you've been so long out of school, whether you've taken gap years in between, whether you haven't done sciences before, as long as you have the passion and desire to learn and develop yourself and grow in that area that you want to do. Like myself, I like immunology, and I found it very, very helpful. And then I've gone on to the infectious diseases, which currently is very important in any clinical setting as well. So it's transferable, and I'm going to build on a bit more to it as well, continuing. I found it really helpful for me in terms of specializing in my own clinical area. So I get a bit of an upper hand when it comes to employment. So hooray, lucky me. But then the other thing that I would like to say is, whilst I was doing this, it didn't come that easily. Just as we said before, you have to be really organized and time conscious. There is room for, there will be failing. There will be not being able to get it right. That's not the end of it. You can always seek help and guidance from the lecturers themselves, and the student services are there to guide you. Personally, I am one of the disabled students, and so there is a very good support system for students that have disabilities in any form, and those that are less privileged and those that are also excellent. We do have the services within the university that provide everybody in each different scope of life. So I would say, when you take the opportunity to join us, utilize these university services that are there, enroll into them, reach out for help when you need it, and tell you what, it will go through and you'll succeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Some excellent advice there as well. So we'll wrap things up there now. So thanks once again to Beatrice and Jocelyn for joining today. Thank you for those of you who have listened to this live, and for those of you that have listened to it on the recording. I hope you found it informative as well, and I hope to see some of you on the course when it runs from October this year. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.